Hi, this is SS5304 Psychology and Crime, Group Research Project Stalking. Well, let's go to part 1, Case Description. Case 1. The one story is about a young couple. A Chinese boy, Tao Rukun, burnt his ex-girlfriend Joanne for failing to reconcile. Tao brought fear with her and wanted to negotiate with his ex-girlfriend at her home. But Jo turned down the boy and she was attacked by him. The 17-year-old boy Tao Rukun has always admired Joanne, a fellow student of the same school. But the two are in different classes and often go home together after school. In June 2010, they graduated from Southern Middle School. Tao Rukun pursued Joanne in the third semester of school. Later on, Joanne wanted to break up, but Tao Rukun threatened her not to do so. On the afternoon of September 17, 2011, Tao Rukun came to Joanne's home. Joanne said, "Don't harass me anymore. I have to study hard." Tao Rukun said, "You are not allowed to fall in love with any guys in high school for 3 years. If you find a boyfriend, you will die." After Joanne heard about that, she said, "Why should I listen to you?" Tao Rukun immediately took out a bottle and the splash fell on Joanne. Joanne suddenly caught fire. Joanne's auntie put out the fire hurriedly and asked Tao Rukun to call an ambulance, but Tao Rukun ignored her request. After the ambulance arrived, Tao Rukun said, "You'd better tell your family that this was an accident. Even if I am caught in this matter, I will be released in at most 1 week." After 7 days in the ICU, Joanne was finally out of danger. According to the hospital, her left ear was damaged, and her hand, face, neck were badly burned. Her beautiful face was destroyed by Tao Rukun. She tried to commit suicide many times, but was saved. This incident caused her serious physical and psychological trauma. Actually, when Tao Rukun faced the crisis of losing his girlfriend, he often wandered in Jo's house downstairs. More than once was questioned as a thief. Later, because Joanne was angry and refused to let him in, he unexpectedly set fire in the corridor, almost setting fire to the neighbors' items at the door. All these crazy acts set the stage for this incident. Okay, let's go to case 2, a Japanese case. A Japanese man called Hiro who broke down with his wife, and he refused to accept that his wife could live. He was very angry and regret against her. He regards his wife as his personal property, so he began to trace her phone and watching her relatives' house in some places where she might stay. What's more perverted was that he remembered all their doctors and his wife's clothes, so he knew exactly where she was when he saw the clothes on the clothesline. As things escalated, he broke the windows and went inside the house to threaten both of them with a knife to force his wife and his doctor to come home with him. What's worse, he decided to kill his wife in the court. A few months later, Hiro became a Christian and spent most of his evenings seeking guidance from the Bible. He goes to downtown Tokyo every week for psychotherapy, because there are no counseling facilities in most parts of Japan. Actually, Japan is a man-dominated society and one of the worst gender equality ratings, which has strong gender bias. The police response to the victims was also poor, and the reported number of stalking cases is really just a tip of the iceberg. One of the victims in stalking cases said that she still remembers thinking that the Japanese police are more inclined to protect the offenders rather than the victims.
This part is about the case analysis. From the perspective of the offending motives, in both cases, most of them doing such aggressive action mainly because they brought up with their girlfriends or wives, or other psychological predisposition child. In case 1, Tao Ru-kun has been brought up by his grandparents since he was a child, but he does not dare to take strict discipline, resulting in a sharp temper of Tao Ru-kun and easy to dispute with people. The lack of family care and the limitation of intergenerational education encourage the formation of Tao Ru-kun's rebellious and violent character at the critical stage of shaping his outlook on life and values. In the eyes of his classmates, Tao Ru-kun liked to watch violent video. Some students knew the dark side of Tao Ru-kun's character. He was solitary and violent. Even the neighbor knew the boy's stubbornness. Tao also believed that everything in life can be solved by violence. In real life, Tao often uses violence to solve problems. During Tao Ru-kun's love affair with Zhou Yan, Tao Ru-kun also used violence against Zhou Yan. This led Tao Ru-kun to resort to violence when pursuing Zhou Yan unsuccessfully. What's more, because his parents are both officials, he is freer to do whatever he wants compared with his peers. In cases 2, in Japanese tradition, women have a lower status in family. This makes Hero unable to accept the fact after his divorce from his wife, who he considered his wife and daughter to be his own accessories. Excessive possessiveness is the main reason for Hero's sexual harassment and violence against his wife and daughter. Therefore, when Hero's wife chooses to divorce, Hero wants to take the form of violence. He chooses to kill the wife in an attempt to permanently possess her in this way. From the perspective of victimology, in the first case, the victim was a female high school student from an ordinary family. Instead, Tao grew up in a family of a government official. At the same time, Zhou Yan had a love relationship with Tao Ru-kun, and its trust for Tao Ru-kun has a certain sense of trust. This makes Zhou Yan dare not speak out when being harassed by Tao Ru-kun. In the second case, the victim was the stalker's spouse, and because Japan is a male-dominated society, most women choose not to speak out when they are sexually harassed, including his wife. Meanwhile, in Japan's male-dominated environment, the victim doesn't have the resource to get the help she needs.
In this part, the consistency with literature and proposed implication for practice will be presented. First, let's talk about the nature of stalking. From the meta-analysis of 175 studies provided by Spitzberg and his colleague, it can be learned that stalking is typically identified as an intentional pattern of unwanted and repeated behaviors toward a person or persons, and this behavior results in fear. In this research, distinguishable stalking behaviors are classified in 8 categories. They are hyper-intimacy, mediated context, interracial context, surveillance, invasion, harassment and intimidation, coercion and threat, and aggression. Consistently, in the cases presented, both perpetrators committed multiple kinds of stalking behaviors. In case 1, Taoru-kun took his courtship activities to an excessive level, begging Jo-yeon not to break up with him. As Jo-yeon refused and determined to leave, Tao's hyper-intimacy behaviors escalated to harassment and intimidation, verbally stressing and threatening Jo-yeon, and consequently the physical violence, spraying Jo-yeon with AIDS. In case 2, the perpetrator Hero started with surveillance without his ex-wife's awareness, which is actually really qualified as stalking. However, Hero then became more invasive. He began to chase her phone and watch the places where she might stay, violating the prescribed personal and legal boundaries. With the forbearance and fear of his ex-wife, Hero escalated to coercion and threat behaviors, forcing his ex-wife and daughter to come home with knives. At the end of physical violence, killing his ex-wife in the court. As we turn our focus on the reasons behind stalking, we'll find that there are so many sets of motivations that trigger this behavior. Among these numerous reasons explaining why stalkers stalk, one of the most widespread is the unwanted pursuit of intimacy. In the cases we present, Taoru-kun's stalking was basically driven by his obsession with intimate relationship he had with Jo-yeon and the refusal of breaking up with her. Similarly, Hero's stalking was largely driven by his anger and grudge against his ex-wife's leaving, which is essentially his obsession with keeping his family together. In a word, both stalkers are driven by the unilateral desire of pursuit of intimacy. From the perpetrator's perspective, what they have done is merely the necessary protective action for maintaining their intimate relationship with whom they love. However, for the victims of stalking, even under the circumstance that their safeties are not well guaranteed, there are actually not many choices left for them, as mentioned in the literature. One of the reasons is that, to avoid getting caught, stalkers often steer clear out of outright illegal behaviors, utilizing the ambiguous zone of laws and regulations. And even when legal steps are taken, stalkers often find they are able to test the boundary of such constraints without stepping over them, leaving the victims helpless. Nevertheless, some effective victims' coping responses are examined in many studies and classified into 5 categories. They are moving with tactics, moving against tactics, moving away tactics, moving inward tactics, and moving outward tactics. In case 1, Tao's victim Jo-yeon coped with moving with tactics at the early time, trying to reason with Tao. As the situation became more intense, she transferred to moving against tactics, threatening to call the police. Unfortunately, such efforts did not save Jo-yeon from Tao's physical violence. In case 2, Hero's ex-wife used moving away tactics. She kept moving from place to place to avoid Hero, refusing to respond Hero's attempts to contact. Sadly, like Jo-yeon, her attempts failed eventually. To prevent such tragedy from happening again, specific measures against stalking should be taken. Hence, let's turn our focus to the part of the proposed implication for practice. From the cases we presented, it's obvious that 2 stalkers managed to get what they want mainly due to the ambiguous zone of behavior between normal behavior and the stalking behaviors. So we think it's urged that the law and regulations against stalking should be more targeted, specific, and severe. Those vague and out-of-date laws and regulations are no longer suitable for current situation anymore. Under the current laws and regulations, the costs of victims are too high and the sentence of perpetrators are too light. Besides, in view of Heroes transforming, we propose that mental status assessment and therapy should be assigned compulsively for those stalkers who got caught. In the meanwhile, we noticed that both victims turned to law enforcement agency for help and both of them did not get effective feedback from law enforcement agency. Therefore, we suggest that law enforcement agencies should pay more attention on the cases against stalking, since these stalking cases might become violent crime without proper management. That's all for our presentation. Thanks for watching.